Hi all, welcome to LearnIT. In the previous videos of AWS certification track, we learned about AWS Code Commit, AWS Code Build among AWS developer services. And today we are going to learn about AWS Code Pipeline service. We'll look into AWS Code Pipeline workflow. We'll understand how AWS Code Pipeline works. And then we will create one AWS Elastic Beanstalk application and deploy a sample Spring Boot application into AWS Elastic Beanstalk. And at last, we will create a code pipeline for a Spring Boot application with GitHub as a source repository. So guys, what is AWS Code Pipeline? AWS Code Pipeline is a fully managed service. It is a continuous delivery service that can help us to automate, build, test and deploy phases of our application for every change we want to release. It is very easy to integrate. It can be integrated with GitHub, Bitbucket, AWS Code Commit, AWS S3, AWS Elastic Container Registry for source code, and it can be integrated with Jenkins as external build provider. Also, it allows us to use pre-packaged and custom build environments using AWS CodeBuild as well as Jenkins. So let's look into the AWS Code Pipeline workflow. So the workflow is very simple. It has three main stages. First is source stage, second is build stage, and the third is deploy stage. The build stage we can perform our testing as well. If we talk about the source stage, AWS Code Pipeline supports AWS S3, ECR, Code Commit, Bitbucket, GitHub and GitHub Enterprise Server as a source code repository, and it will be able to integrate with these services as a source code repository. If we talk about build stage, we have two providers. One is AWS CodeBuild and the other is Jenkins. We can use either of these providers to build our source code and upload build artifacts to S3 bucket. And at last, we have deploy stage where exactly we are going to deploy our artifact. So we have options like AWS CloudFormation, AWS Code Deploy, AWS Elastic Beanstalk, AWS ECS, and many more options are there to deploy our final artifact. And today we are going to use AWS Elastic Beanstalk as a deployment provider. Now let's go to AWS console and create an Elastic Beanstalk application. So guys, I have logged into AWS console now and I am going to create a new Elastic Beanstalk application because we are going to create CI/CD for AWS Elastic Beanstalk as a deployment provider. So let's create a new AWS Elastic Beanstalk application. And here we have to provide the application name. Let's give Spring Boot demo app. I had created earlier, so it is giving the option for that. And for platform, if you want to provide any tags, you can provide. Say I'm giving tag for author as LearnIT. And for platform, as we are going to deploy for Spring Boot var web archive, let's choose Tomcat as a platform and version as Tomcat 8.5 and Corito 11. Corito 11 is production ready distribution for OpenJDK 11. Next we have to provide the sample application. We can upload our code as well. So let's upload our code. And I am choosing a file from my sample application. So I have built it already. This is a demo one. Let's upload it. Let's click create application. And you can see AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment creation is in progress. So under the hood, it is trying to launch AWS EC2 instance, security group, load balancer, target group, and deploying this web application, that is web archive of Spring Boot sample application. So you can see here, this is the sample application I have created for AWS Spring Boot, and I have built it, and the same var I have uploaded in our AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Now let's go back to AWS console again, and we can see it is in progress. So let's wait for some time and we will be able to see our AWS Elastic Beanstalk application is up with AWS Spring Boot application var. So guys, you can see The Elastic Beanstalk environment creation is finished and the health it is showing is red. Now let's look at the causes why it is showing red. So if we see here, it is saying that LB processes are not healthy on all instances. So let's go to AWS EC2 and see our load balancer and target group. If we go to load balancer, we have got one load balancer, and if you go to target group, we have one target group, and if we look at the target group targets, then we have one instance, but it is saying unhealthy. So if we go to health checks, we can see the path which is mapped by default is just a slash, and it is expecting a 200 status code for this mapping in our application, but the application has only slash hello mapping for 200 status code. So let's go to edit our health check path. So I'm going to edit from just a slash to slash hello so that it can get 200 status code and it can update the health status in some time. So if we check the health now for targets, in some time it will be able to update the health. So guys, you can see the instance is now healthy. Now let's go back to AWS Elastic Beanstalk and see the status here. It is showing that the health is green. Now let's click on the SpringBoot environment URL. You can see here we are getting a response 404 because we don't have any default mapping. So let's hit hello, which is a get REST service call, and see the response. So guys, you can see we are getting the response, welcome to LearnIT, Spring Boot app is up and running, and the same we have returned from our hello get method. So guys, we are done with deploying a sample Spring Boot application in AWS Elastic Beanstalk, and now we are going to create a new pipeline for this application. Let's search for CodePipeline, the global service search, and here we will be able to create a new pipeline for our Spring Boot application. So let's hit create pipeline, and here we have got a basic form for create pipeline. So let's provide the pipeline name as Spring Boot demo pipeline, and the next thing we have here is service execution role. So this service execution role, we can choose an existing service execution role, or we can choose for new service execution role, and this service execution role will have all the permissions to trigger other services like code build, code deploy, code commit, cloud formation, what and all services we required from AWS CodePipeline. This service execution role will be having all those permissions, and we are giving permissions to create AWS CodePipeline this new service execution role. Under advanced settings, we have an option to select artifact store. So here by default it is an S3 location which will be chosen by AWS CodePipeline service, and it will use by default one AWS managed key to encrypt our artifacts. If you want to provide customer managed key for encryption, and if you want to choose your own S3 location for artifact store, you can select these options. Now let's go to next stage. Guys, here we have to provide the details of our source provider like AWS Code Commit, S3, Bitbucket, GitHub. So we are trying to deploy an application from GitHub. So let's go with GitHub version 2 because GitHub version 1 is no more recommended. The first thing we have to provide here is a connection. So if you are setting up the first time code pipeline with your GitHub, you have to choose connect to GitHub. Once you click on connect to GitHub, you will be able to add a new connection, and using this option, using this form, you will be able to create a new connection which will be able to pull your repository details from GitHub. So I already created a Spring private repo connection, and using this connection you can see it will be able to show me my repositories. So let's click on Spring Boot app AWS CodePipeline repo because I have my source code in this repository. It is here basically. And after choosing the repository, we can select the branch. So I have chosen main branch. Now here we have an option whether we want to deploy the change as soon as it detects the change. So if we choose start the pipeline on source code change, it will automatically start the pipeline whenever you are pushing any change in your code repository. And the next option we have here is output artifact format. So I have chosen default, which is a zip format of the artifacts. Now let's go to next stage. And guys, we have reached the second stage, that is build stage of our pipeline, and here we have to provide the build provider. So we are going to use AWS CodeBuild in this example. You can also choose Jenkins if you have a Jenkins server running in your account. So let's click on AWS CodeBuild, and same region we have to provide a project name if we have already a existing CodeBuild project to build our Spring Boot application, or we can create a new project. So let's create a new project for Spring Boot application, and here I am providing a name as Spring Boot demo code build. Description I am keeping empty for now. If you want to restrict the number of concurrent builds, you can choose this option. And here the main thing is environment image. We have to choose the build environment, the Docker container which will be created using this environment image. So guys, I am choosing managed image that is provided by AWS CodeBuild. If you want to provide your custom Docker image, you can choose custom image option and provide the location of your Docker image inside ECR, so that a custom image can be used for build environment as well. If you want to learn more on AWS CodeBuild, you can watch the previous video on AWS CodeBuild in detail. So the next option we have here is operating system for our build environment, and I am choosing Amazon Linux environment. And under runtime, I am choosing standard with image that is latest for this Linux build environment. So using this image, it will create a build environment using Docker container, and with that container it will be building our source code. Next we have a privilege option. If you want to build Docker images using the containers or code build environments, then you have to use privileged mode. And here we have a service execution role, and this service execution role will be attached to our AWS CodeBuild project to connect with other services like AWS CloudWatch, AWS SNS. Wherever it has to trigger any of these services, all the permissions will be provided inside this service execution role for AWS CodeBuild project. So I am giving the role name as Spring Boot Demo Code Build Service role. That's fine by default. And at last we have build spec. So here we have to provide how it will build our application. So I am providing option as user build spec file, and this file must be present in root directory of your application source code. So using this build spec file, it will try to build your source code. And the next option we have here is build spec name, which is optional. If you have a custom name, if you are not following the standard name of build spec file, then you will have to provide this. Otherwise it will be buildspec.yml if you choose the standard naming convention. So you just have to provide a file with name buildspec.yml in your application's root directory. If it is some other name, then you will have to provide it here. The next option we have here is for CloudWatch. If you want CloudWatch logs, you can choose this and provide the group name and stream name. These are optional. By default, it will create some CloudWatch log group and stream for this code build project. If you want to store logs in S3, then you can provide this option here as well. Now let's continue to code pipeline. So it is creating a new build project for our Spring Boot application. And you can see it has successfully created a Spring Boot demo code build project under AWS CodeBuild. And the next, we have an option for build type, whether we have single build or batch build. So I have chosen single build by default. Let's go to next stage, and here we have the final stage, that is deployment stage, and here we have to provide the deployment provider. So we are going to update AWS Elastic Beanstalk application. We are creating a CI/CD pipeline for AWS Elastic Beanstalk application. So I am choosing AWS Elastic Beanstalk, and here we have to provide the name of the existing application. So we have a Spring Boot demo app, right? We have created, and here we have to provide the environment of that application that we want to update using this pipeline. So I am choosing Spring Boot demo app environment. Let's click to next, and here we can finally review the complete pipeline. So our pipeline name is Spring Boot demo pipeline. Our source is GitHub. Type of artifact is code zip. So let's hit on create pipeline, and it is now creating your AWS code pipeline for AWS Elastic Beanstalk application using a CodeBuild deployment provider, and source is GitHub. And you can see it has started the pipeline. So guys, let's go to application source code and deploy a small change. So I have updated a response of our earlier REST service get call, that is /hello. I have added a update at last. Let's publish this change. Let's push this change and see where our code pipeline is working fine or not. So let's commit this change. Response change, hello response change. And I'm saying git push. So ideally our code pipeline should be triggered, and this change, this updated response should be deployed in our AWS Elastic Beanstalk application using that code pipeline. So let's go to AWS CodePipeline again and click on pipelines. So guys, you can see it is giving in progress, and if you look at the source, that is commit, this commit is hello response change. This is our latest commit. So guys, with our push, it has triggered this pipeline, and now the change is getting built and it will be deployed soon. So let's go to source change link. So we have updated this and it has triggered build for this change. And right now this build source stage is done, build stage is going on. Now let's wait to complete this build stage and deployment stage. This deployment stage, you can see here, it is of different ID. This is previous execution ID. Now we have execution ID is 5D0. That is our latest pipeline. So let's wait to complete this pipeline. And guys, you can see the deployment for this version is also done. The ID is 5D0, which is our latest commit hello response change. Now let's go to Spring Boot application that is deployed in Elastic Beanstalk again, and click on our or refresh the application status. So we can see the health is okay. Now let's go to Spring Boot environment URL, and with this environment URL we don't have any default mapping. Now let's hit hello again, and we should get the updated response. So you can see we are getting update at the last, and this is the updated response of our get service. Now let's have a look on our buildspec.yml file and understand it. So if you had missed the earlier video on AWS code build, let's go through this buildspec.yml file once again. And here you can see in the pre-build phases, I just have a echo command. In the build phase, we have mvn clean prepare package var exploded command. And what it will do, it will deploy, it will unzip our var and move all the files under the deploy folder. And under post build, I am saying move all the files from deploy/webinf to root directory of webinf. And under artifacts, we have provided the path for webinf folder which is present in the root directory. So using this webinf folder, it will pull all the libraries, classes, everything, and it will deploy that artifact into our AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment. So this is on our build spec YAML file. If we look at the pom.xml, we need to add one plugin to create a exploded var, and this plugin is Maven plugin for exploded vars. So this is the plugin which has to be there to create the exploded var to deploy the SpringBoot application to AWS Elastic Beanstalk using AWS CodePipeline and CodeBuild. So guys, today we covered basics of AWS CodePipeline. We learned how to create a simple code pipeline for AWS Elastic Beanstalk as a deployment provider and GitHub as a source provider for a Java application. In the upcoming videos, we will learn about AWS SQS, AWS SNS, AWS Staff Functions, Route 53 and many more services. Thank you for watching this video. Please join me in the next videos.